Hey everyone, good morning. It is the Teach Better Today morning show, and we are here to kick off your morning like we do every single Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern, currently streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. Please make sure, by the way, you're following the Teach Better team on all those platforms if you are active on those. And also, of course, it's a Teach Better Talk podcast episode. We are thrilled to be here, just overjoyed, thrilled to be here. We actually have a really big conversation coming, and I feel like this is going to be kind of a big episode. Katie Miglin is not prepared for the things that I intend to throw her way. We have a really challenging listener question, which I'm very glad that we're going to share all this information. And then I also, of course, had a conversation like this morning with my mother, who then sparked the rest of our conversation this morning. So we'll be right back. Good morning, everyone. Thrilled to have you here on Teach Better Today. Katie Miglin's in the house. How are you, Katie?
Good morning, friends. Got my cup of joe. My warm, cozy sweater. You know, today's a new day.
It's a good day. I mean, I will say yesterday's episode, we did kind of moan and groan a little, but it's okay. Back on track today.
We sat in our feelings for a little bit and then we moved on. We had a productive day yesterday. It was fine. It was great.
Yeah. Now we're back on track. And I do want to say, apologize to our community. I talked about my mother yesterday. I'm going to talk about her again today. But today I have a real reason. I feel like Julie Ford is coming up a lot.
Yeah, but never apologize because Julie Ford is fantastic.
Okay. It's so funny. So funny you say that. And this is what I wanted to talk about. So friends, Teach Better family, I'm so excited to get your thoughts on this because this was the discussion this morning on our walk. And literally as it's happening, I'm like, Mom, you know I'm going to podcast about this, right? She's like, oh my God, please don't. I'm like, it's for sure the topic of this morning's conversation.
Thank you, Julie Ford, for providing us topics to discuss.
Okay. So I'm literally going to say the whole story and hopefully people that are involved aren't listening to
Get the popcorn, you guys. Get your popcorn.
Here's what happened. So my mom is trying to be a sweet aunt, and she hosted or was one of many hosts of my cousin's bridal shower, which just happened like this past weekend. And my cousin who's getting married is the youngest cousin. She's marrying the most perfect guy in the world. Their wedding is on New Year's Eve. It's going to be adorbs, right?
Yep.
So she is planning this perfect little bridal shower. I, of course, wasn't able to attend, but total FOMO in the pictures.
Yep.
And the whole family's there, friends and family, all the things. So my mom found herself standing next to her brother, and somebody had asked my uncle, her brother, oh, how would you describe Julie, my mom? And he's like, oh gosh, so many things to say. She's just so organized. She, is the best at Excel spreadsheets. She's really ambitious, blah, blah, blah. My mom walked away being like, that is not how I want to be described. Like she was joking. She was like, it's not a bad description. I wasn't mad at my brother for describing me that way. Yeah. But she's like, what about like compassionate, really generous, nice person? Like she was like, everyone was naming my skill sets, not my personality traits. So I guess my dad arrived late to the shower. It was a couple shower. Brings my grandmother. Everybody walks in, says hello. And my uncle goes to my father and says, okay, I was just asked this question of how to describe Julie. How would you describe her? And my father, who's married, happily married to my mother, goes, oh yeah, super organized, a professional at Excel spreadsheets, like very ambitious. And my mom's like, also my best friend, I love her. Like she's like still not about personality. So here's my question. As successful people, is it common to describe successful people by their skills and not their characteristics? Or is she just a weirdo and people actually don't think she's nice and that's why they're not describing her that way?
I feel like it's a cultural thing, like
Oh,
society thing. I don't think that's just a Julie thing.
is
I
it an
wonder,
age thing? Like
I
an
don't even
age
know about
thing?
that. Like, because I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, if I like picked a random person, I described them, I think I would lean on what they're good at, not
Mm.
things that are natural to them. So like your mom being generous and compassionate and things like that, those are natural things
Like
that
they're assumed.
well, and she doesn't have to work at them. So they're just
Mm.
like part of her innate person versus people defined things that she's worked really hard to be good and successful at. And I think that's probably how a lot of people would describe each other. It's like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm like thinking through like how would I describe like
Okay.
this person?
Yes.
I would lean
Yeah.
towards their talents, not necessarily their personality.
Let's do an activity in the comments. We want to hear from you. So if you are not near a spot to like add a comment, come over here. Come to your phone, come to your computer. If you're streaming us on YouTube, on your television, like find a way to comment. I would like us all to describe Jeff Gargas. We all know him. He's part of the Teach Better family. Like, I want a 1 or 2 sentence description. You could do bullet points. How do you describe him? Katie, let's put together our description while they're adding in the comments. Like, how would you describe Jeff? Would you go towards personality accolades or characteristics?
Well, now I feel like I'm super aware of it.
Well,
So
I was doing the same thing. I'm like, okay, so I think if I was to describe Jeff, I'd be like, oh my gosh, he's my best friend, or like one of my best friends. He changed my life.
I
He
would like hardworking, like
he's
he's
super hardworking,
passionate.
great leader within our team and externally. He also is like, see, I would describe him as generous. Like he's constantly giving to others. He does free coaching for our edupreneurs, like educators that are entrepreneurs all the time. He's constantly
Agreed.
wanting to give things away to people to be successful.
See, and I would like summarize, I think when you say he's super generous, especially with his time, like that to me is like he's super hardworking. Like I would put it under the umbrella of hardworking because to me, he's constantly working to better, like be better for himself, but also help others be better. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes it just depends on how you view that specific characteristic because you are like he's generous, he gives up time, energy for literally anyone, like which is
Yes.
100% true. But I also am like, but that takes time and him to like he has to like commit work to that. So I don't, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. I don't like this. I feel like this is a complicated
I
Julie
just
Ford, dang it.
I just wouldn't describe Jeff by saying, "Oh, he's super organized. He like is a
Sure.
professional at using Basecamp, which is our internal like system. He's really
That's
good
true.
at the finances." Like I wouldn't do that. That's not what first comes to mind. Whereas my mother, if I was describing her, I'd be like, "Well, she's really intimidating and she's super judgmental and she's also a really nice person."
No, I don't know. This is I'm gonna like I feel like I'm gonna analyze every way I think of a person now. Like, okay, how would I describe that?
I know. And like then of course at the end of our phone call, she's like, "Bye, sweetie. I love you." And I'm like, "Mom, that's weird. We don't like in our family. We don't hug. We don't say I love you very often, like all that." And she's like, "Stop, Ray. I'm trying to be generous and kind."
I do think it's really funny that you called your mom. This is a side note, and then we'll get into our team talk. Because I talk to my mom probably just as often as you talk to yours, which is
Yeah.
often. And my 8-year-old Harper the other day goes, "Why are you calling grandma again? Didn't you just talk to her?" And I said, "Yeah, I talk to her like every day." She goes, "Well, to be clear, I will not talk to you that much when I'm an adult." It's like, cool. Cool. Thanks.
Harper says that, but she's your mini me. So I think that
No.
you guys like I think that you guys are going to grow and your relationship is going to like get more and more attached to one another. Whereas Stella may not call you for months at a time.
Right. Stella will be like, "Who are you again?" I'm living my best life.
But who knows
Anywho,
about the third kid might like you a lot.
that's what I'm hoping. I've been, really talking it up. I've been like, please be nice to me, listen to me.
Do we know the gender yet?
No, but you're down to like single digit days of
I
finding out.
literally can't wait until the 13th at noon. I think we should all, everybody in the Teach Better family, we should all go to the hospital. It's the 13th. Some of us have work in school, but like, let's all take a sick day. Let's all of us together take a sick day. Katie will be thrilled to have thousands of people at the hospital with her. And you could like do the smoke. Like you could let the hospital like do blue or
Yeah.
pink smoke like the Pope.
Okay. Yeah, we
It's different.
could. Or you guys could just like wait and I'll tell you.
How are we going to announce it? Like, will there be like a Facebook post? Is there like
I
a
mean, probably. I have to go at noon. You're not going to have any answers for a few hours.
like 12:01 is what I'm
Sure.
thinking.
Yep. Let's get into our team talk because this conversation is getting dicey.
All right, hold on. I'm going to add it to my calendar. Hey everyone, good morning. We're actually getting into a really hot topic here on the Teach Better Today morning show. So thank you for sticking with us, even though the beginning of the first like 11 minutes of this episode were pure shenanigans. Let's actually get into a listener question that I think some of you may have thought we weren't going to answer, but we're going to answer it. Katie, are you ready to answer a listener question that I think in your mind when I ask, you're going to be like, we can't actually do this entire thing on the morning show?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
Challenge accepted.
Okay. Love it. Okay. So we are all about on the Teach Better team really trying to get our community answers. Like we don't want to just like give you overarching like philosophies. You know, we want to give you that tactical, tangible takeaway that you can go and be a better educator. And we're only here to support you. And we have gotten 2 or 3 questions all around prioritizing standards, prioritizing power standards. And the funny part is, as Katie's rolling her eyes, we do training on this all the time. To be honest, Katie and I are a little like exhausted doing this topic because it's really tedious and it's frustrating and it's very popular right now. And so a lot of the schools are working with is starting with this skill and, you know, going through this entire process. And it's like a 2-day workshop plus, right? It's like a big overhaul to sit down in your content area, go through all your standards and identify those priority power standards. But I think we should lay out the entire process for people listening, because if it helps somebody do this better, whether they're doing it with us or not, this is an important component of setting a strong foundation for educators moving forward. So are you up for like literally going through our training in like a really shortened sense of how we identify priority power standards?
Yes. And I also want to preface this by saying the reason we like I'm rolling my eyes and Ray saying we're kind of like burned out isn't because it's not valuable. It's because this is like laying the foundation for what you will teach. And so it's super, super valuable, but it cuts all the warm and fuzzies out.
Yes.
Like it is very like data driven. It's very, factual. There's not a lot of creativity with it, which is where I think you and I during trainings, we lean on some of those more enjoyable trainings of like where we can bring in some creativity. So it is really helpful and it will like make a huge difference in what you teach, but it is that like foundation. It's like laying the basement, right? When you go look at a new house and you're like, oh, there's the basement. Cool, the house looks kind of boring right now. That's why. It's because you got to have that strong foundation so that you can do all the creative thinking later. So,
and my mindset is once it's done, you don't have to do it again for a long time. You might like do an audit and check it like years later,
right.
But
you're auditing it in a few years, maybe checking in with your department, whatever.
Or if you change standards, like that's when you need to do it again. But do it really well once, and then that foundation is built for you for success.
Which is what we really push for districts. So if you're someone who's trying to figure this out, navigate it, one of the things we really, really kind of like harp on is take the time now so that the rest of it goes smoothly. Because if you kind of,
Mhm.
if you, for lack of a better word, like half-ass it and don't really put the conversation in and the thought in and looking at those standards, it isn't going to have any benefit to you. And I think that's where people sometimes fall short is they're like, I have one institute day to knock this out. Let's knock it out quickly. And then they don't see the benefit, which is what the issue is. So I also want to say that if you are someone who has a lot of standards, because we work with a ton of different departments,
Content areas, departments, states, like
yeah.
communities.
Yeah. So if you're thinking of your standards, the intention behind it is for specifically the areas that have a ton of standards that you realistically couldn't get through in a given year. And you and I both lived that firsthand a bajillion years ago. You know, we were given these like novel of standards and it was like, yeah, teach this in 1 year. And it's like, well, how does that actually happen in a classroom with students and for them to actually have mastery of it? So that's where this kind of originated, right? Was to
Right.
get
The content was like, if you're teaching all the standards with the same quote unquote fidelity,
level.
you're
Yeah,
almost teaching no standards because you're
correct.
just trying to cover it, not actually teach it.
Correct.
So,
So that is but this also can work for areas that don't have standards or they don't have like they're more skill set. So we've worked with districts that I actually just worked with one last week and they had a couple of their departments were more skill driven because the state of Illinois doesn't have standards for that specific class. This idea, this concept can be applied to even those too. So it's valuable no matter what you teach, where you teach, and how you teach it. So
yeah, I just did this same workshop that we're going to talk about today. I literally just did with a school district in California where I work specifically with their middle schools, 6, 8 in all subject areas. So again, like this is something we do very frequently and it is absolutely something to consider. So anyway, share this feed before we get into the details. Share wherever you're watching from on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, or LinkedIn. Take a screenshot of this podcast. This is a good one to add in a newsletter if you want your teachers to start considering this idea. Or if you're in a department where this is being discussed, tag them in this
yep.
video to make sure that they see it. But Katie, can you do an overview of the steps an educator needs to go through looking at their standards for one class, one specific course,
Yep.
and what we would typically support in this training?
Yep. So if you are you really kind of have to narrow in your focus. So if you're someone that teaches a variety of courses, if you're someone that teaches a variety of grade levels, like really kind of focus on one set of standards. And you're going to go standard by standard. Now, I'm going to repeat, you're going to go by standard, not ICANN statements, not your learning objectives, not anything that you have created. You are looking at the state standards that exist for your content.
Like the ugly
Yeah,
version
like the
of the
ones that
standards.
we try to like put in a closet and shut the door and pretend they're not there. So when you look at your individual standards, you really want to look at the language and not like fill in the gaps. And this is something we talk about a lot in our trainings is sometimes when we are educators, if we've been teaching something for many years, we fill in the gaps of what the standard doesn't say. So it might say one thing, but we know what the curriculum says, or we know what our expectations are. During this training or this activity, you really have to look at just what the language is, like cut all of it out of the back of your mind. And there you're going to look at how it relates to other content areas. So is it something that you would have to, let's say, so like math, for example, is it a concept that a science teacher would have to cover before they can teach their concept? So we see that sometimes in chemistry, right? They've got to know equations and how equations work.
Ratios. Yeah.
Yep.
Or like
So,
measurement is super common.
yep.
Mhm.
So you have to look at how it relates to other content area. Now, some content areas want to say, well, it's in everything. Well, not every standard is in everything. That's why it goes back to leaning on that language. So when you look at the language, if you feel like another content area has to directly teach it or instruct it in order for the students to be successful in their class, then it would get a point. And then you want to look at also how it relates to your current content. So we see a lot of younger grades find that they are the foundational skills, right? So they are teaching some of those things that are going to be used in grade levels ahead. So a student has to master a fourth grade standard in order to be successful in eighth grade and a junior year. So if it's something that will be needed in the future, then you'll give it another point. Where we see this sometimes is not the case is in those high school level courses. So the one that comes to mind is like I worked with a geometry team and they were teaching something that like they were teaching it in geometry and then a kid never needed to really do anything with it after that point because that was the last course. So if you look at the language and you're like, they really like won't do anything with this again, they won't dig deeper, then it does not get a point. And then, yeah, go
I
ahead.
was just going to add to that. The other time that you might see it not earn a point in this category is if you cover it early on in elementary school, but it doesn't come up until like a high school age or a middle school age where they would have to reteach it anyway because it's been such a lengthy amount of time.
Yep.
So not as you're thinking through, if you're an elementary teacher, you're like, oh my God, that's already 2 points for everything. Not necessarily really looking at that long-term, what is that? Vertical alignment's important.
And again, looking at the language, the specific language that's in the standard, not what you think they will then eventually do with it. It's like what it says. And then the last part that it honestly takes the most time is determining what DOK level it is. We like DOK because it's 4 categories. We have a ton of resources on our website as far as the descriptions and how you can kind of decipher them. We have a full course on determining DOK. Depth of
Can I tell you that I cheated during my workshop in California?
Right? Out yourself right now.
I mean, wholeheartedly. So the hardest part of this process that everybody deters from, this group I had actually worked with like months before, and I was coming together with them to like continue this work. And they were so resistant to this DOK section because it's hard. It's hard to identify DOK in general for a standard, but it's also difficult to do it over and over and over and over and over. It's super tedious. So they were kind of like just guessing and like not putting work into it because they were super over it. So we totally cheated, and you can cheat too. We copy and pasted standards into ChatGPT and asked it to identify the DOK standard, and it totally did. Like nobody had to do anything. And it like eliminated the hurdle of the resistant educators to be like, I don't want to put this much thought into something that I'm not seeing an immediate benefit from. I was like, well, ChatGPT will do it for you.
And I love that because that you just need to know what the DOK is. Now, if you're going to do future work with it, which would be other trainings that we do offer, you'll want to know it a little bit more. But essentially, a score of a standard is going to come from, does it impact other content areas? Does it impact future like steps in your particular content area? And then also what DOK level it is, 1 through typically 3. We don't see a lot of 4s. It's a whole nother conversation I don't know that we have time for, but so the score is going to be somewhere between like.
Wait, to confirm, the DOK level is then the point value you're going to get. So if it's a DOK level 1, it only gets 1 point in that section. Or if it's a DOK level 3, it gets 3 points for that one section.
Yeah. So it's your point system is going to range, bless you, between like 3 and 5-ish. And again, we're going through this like lightning speed fast. So if you want more information, either reach out to us or we've got tons of resources on our website. But when you look at then all of your standards, so again, this takes time to go through and like really evaluate all your standards and do this scoring process. Then you're going to look at all the scores and then start to prioritize them. And one of the things that sometimes I feel like people get stuck on is they think highest scores have to have the highest priority, which is not always the case. So we've had a ton of like work with districts where they look at some low scoring standards and they feel very strongly it needs to still be taught. But the conversation evolves into, I know we have to cover this, but I don't need to spend 2 weeks on this one standard, which is what I'm currently doing. And so it creates this conversation piece to look at all your standards and decide, what are we teaching? How in depth are we teaching? How long are we teaching them? And then are there some things that maybe I introduce and then the next grade level actually teaches to mastery? Or are there things that another grade level has taught to mastery that then I can just review? And the goal of doing all of this is that you're freeing up time so that you are teaching the things that matter. And based on the scores, they do truly matter. But then also you're teaching them to the depth that they need to be taught to, and not just covering every standardized surface level. So there's a lot of value in doing it, because you're trying to free up your time. So while you might be frustrated, you're sitting in a training working on it. The idea is that you then can maximize your time with your students later on.
Well, and going through this process allows for the majority of the work time to be discussion focused with the people that are impacted by this work. And so I love the discussion that's able to be had between, not only different content areas, but within different grade levels as well. So
Yes.
Hopefully that was helpful for those of you who've been interested in that. Like Katie and I have shared numerous times, this is a multi-day workshop, multi-day process we do with schools all the time. More than happy, literally more than happy to answer questions on it. But definitely a big focus of a lot of schools and departments that we're working with now. So happy to answer those questions. It's not like something that we're going to like gatekeep and not give you the answers to. So keep asking those really, really great instructional questions. Katie, great job going over it for the 3,000th time. If it helps, you're about to go on maternity leave and you won't have to like do any of these workshops for at least a few months. So
That's true. But if you have questions, you can still DM me.
Of course, duh. She'll be hanging out with a baby. She'll love to answer your question.
I would.
All right, friends, we're going to go. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully we'll be able to hear from you, especially like excited to see these comments. So We'll see you soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye, friends.
Hey, Teach Better community. Thank you so much for joining the Teach Better Today morning show every single weekday at 7 a.m. Eastern. We have so many resources for you outside of this live stream at teachbetter.com, including blogs, podcasts, and professional development that will bring our team to your school. Wherever you are listening from this morning, please make sure you are sharing and celebrating the incredible educators in this world. And hey, if you are listening over on a podcast to Teach Better Talk, we would love a 5-star review. The comments are always so entertaining. We'll see you tomorrow.